Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto and welcome to a new video, to a new update. And this is kind of a different video in which I wanted to talk about next week. Next week, as you might have seen from the title and the thumbnail, we have some major news coming out, and that's what I wanted to talk about. I think that there's some moves based on historical data that you need to be aware of and you need to be prepared for. And then afterwards, also what you can expect after the news next week. All right. And this news that we are talking about, which will start off with what it actually is and what it means for the markets in general, but also for the crypto markets. And then we'll talk about what that has meant for the markets and price action in the past years, actually. So for those of you who don't know, Wednesday we have this major data. Now, if you watch my videos this morning, you're completely aware of what's going on. But on Wednesday, we have the Federal Reserve interest rate decision and the press conference. Now, in a sense, nothing new is coming, or at least nothing new is coming for the interest rate decision. It could happen, but at this point of time, there is about a 96.4% chance that we're going to get one rate cut, right? So that the interest rate in the United States, determined by the Federal Reserve, drops down 0.25%. Now, in a sense, that's bullish for the markets, right? Lower interest rates are good for the financial markets. But since this was already known for at least a week and a half, this is priced in, right? So when the interest rate actually goes down, nothing happens. We will be volatile, we could be bullish, but not because they cut the interest rates. And what could happen, there's a 3.6% chance that they cut it by 50 base points. That is not priced in. So if that happens, we will most likely see a bullish move, unless it comes with recession fears. But that seems unlikely. It's look, we've had a lot of economic data in the past 2 weeks. We've had our fair share of recession fears, but ultimately it never won. It never won the general perception on the financial market. So that's good, right? So, that's completely known. But ultimately, the press conference matters, all right? We want to know what the Federal Reserve actually thinks of what is going on with the economic data and how they perceive the rest of the year. Will we get more rate cuts? That's bullish. Will they kind of, wait and see approach? Then that's bearish, right? So that press conference is going to be very volatile. And what's being said in that press conference, it's very subtle notes and very subtle hints, will matter for the markets as well. But in general, regardless of what happens during the interest rate decision and during the press conference, going into a week like this historically has been very volatile as well. And one of the main things that you need to know, and I spent a good chunk of my afternoon researching this, but in general, I mean, I've been trading for quite some time. So I've seen this quite often as well. I have the data to the left of me, about 80% of the time, the start of the week before the Federal Reserve interest rate decision, so that's basically from now until Wednesday afternoon, has been bearish. 80% of the time. 80% of the time we've seen de-risking, right? So positions being closed, which normally means that the price drops down as well. And just in general, a sense of caution going into such important data regarding the monetary policy of the United States, which still matters a lot. And that is also, look, 20% of the time, it doesn't matter, right? It's either neutral or we're actually bullish. But one time that was, for example, during November last year, right? So obviously then we had other fundamentals which pushed the price up higher. So then it didn't matter that much that we had an interest rate decision coming up. So ultimately, that's also what I expect for now, right? And that's something I think you need to be aware of. That's something I think you need to be prepared for. A de-risking going into Wednesday. I think that's most likely. Based on historic data, that's most likely. However, if we actually talk about Federal Reserve interest rate decisions and we talk about how often they have caused reversals, again, it has happened, and we're talking about historical data, right? So we're talking about probabilities. But ultimately, you want the probabilities to be on your side. And when we're talking about reversals, that barely happens, right? So if we are already in an uptrend, which this is the 4-hour time frame for Bitcoin, I would argue this is an uptrend. On the higher you go, the more you could say, I don't know. But most timeframes are above the 50 EMA, which is a very simple but still valuable way to gauge trend. But it doesn't happen very often that the interest rate decision, unless we get some news that we did not know, right? So that is something you need to know with the press conference or maybe with the decision. I mean, if they don't cut it, for example, we're probably going to reverse. But it happens it barely happens that it gets a reversal, right? So de-risking initially I do expect, but I think on the higher time frames and the lower time frames, we are in an uptrend, and I don't expect that uptrend, given all the other fundamentals around the markets, to change, right? So my general thoughts, and this is, hopefully you already know a little bit more about what's going to happen next week and what it means, but my general thoughts are that we are going to see a classic FOMC week, right? So that we are going to see de-risking going into the event. The week itself is going to be volatile, right? So we'll have spikes up and down, but ultimately I think we'll see de-risking. But then afterwards, I do expect continuation higher. Like I said, so that's in general what I think you need to know. And then lastly, it's going to be volatile, right? So we could just as well drop down into Wednesday, spike up on Wednesday, and then on Thursday drop down lower, and then afterwards reverse, right? So it's not set in stone, and it's not definite when everything is going to happen. But ultimately, on the higher time frames, this is the move I expect, and I think statistically, it's the move you should expect as well. So that's what I quickly wanted to share with you this Sunday. Hopefully it helps all of you in your trading and investing next week. If you found this interesting, if you found it valuable, consider subscribing, liking, whatever. Join our Telegram, join our Discord. That's it for now. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care and bye.